good. I got a hold of Mr. Steele, and I've been trying to get, trying to talk to somebody about the, all the Wi-Fi and 5G units that they're putting out on all over the public water towers. So yeah. So anyway, we'll just wait. He might be doing something else. So it looks like it's still trying to ring people. But I noticed Victor and Nathan were unavailable. So let me call Mark Steele. So it might just be me and you and Mark Steele. Let me just add this on.
Karen's not going to make it today?
Her light is not on, so I feel like she's probably, not there. Hold on a second. Hold on, it says unavailable. So hold on a second. Let me see if I can Facebook him. Anyway,
I'll be right back. Enjoy your game. Okay.
Oh, good. So Victor posted that he has work to do, so he can't make it, which is fine.
Yeah. We'll see how it all goes. The collab participation with.
Oh, here's Mark.
Oh, good. Cool.
Yeah. Hey, Mark.
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing super good. I know you've been busy, so I haven't been able to actually get you on my radio show again. And but I wanted to talk to you about this is my friend Dr. Lenny Thyme. He's a PhD chemist.
Mark's been on my show before.
Oh yeah. All right. So yeah, so we're recording this for a video we call it the Think Collaborative, which is a YouTube channel that 8 of us share, and we try to put up information, that's important to the public. So one of the things that this is kind of like how this story unfolded, but in 2016, I went down to Sacramento to see my cousin, and we were driving down a country road. And back then I was, against the whole Wi-Fi, all these towers and stuff that were going on. This was before I met you. And we came across the hugest Sacramento water tower, public water tower. And I saw some things on it that freaked me out. So I said, hey, can you pull over? I would just want to walk back and take a look at that. And they had strapped, Wi-Fi, those rectangular Wi-Fi units all the way around this water tower. They also had put up a 5G cylinder right next to it. And then on the other side of it was a Wi-Fi tower, right? A cell phone tower. And I literally almost vomited when I saw that, because it took my mind a while to, try to figure out why in the hell would they be putting, microwave. All I could think was microwave oven, water, foil, shut the door, cook it, explosion, right? And now California is a completely 5G state, right? So now all of their water towers actually have 5G and 4G and all this strapping. So there hasn't been any water towers that I could find. I don't go to California now. I stay out of California. But now I'm starting to see it here in Reno and Nevada, that they now are putting up, 5G cylinders next to the water towers. They're strapping them with the units, and then sometimes they have a cell phone. So I wanted to talk to you about your thoughts, experience, and what you think about that. I mean, dealing with the water. And this is what happened. I got into this huge argument with somebody the other day over, I do get filtered water because the water's so bad in the United States. But I said, do you have anything that can remove the 5G, the microwave radiation out of the water? And they looked at me like I had a horn on my head, because I was like, you're selling, pure water, and it's not pure water. It has microwave radiation in it because you pulled it in from the public system. It's strapped with all of this stuff on it. And, you know, it's full of microwave radiation. And then on top of it, the microwave radiation's interacting with the metal structures that are holding the water, right? And so it's something that people aren't actually discussing or talking about. And I know that you just have too much stuff to talk about, but I wanted to get you on to talk to you about your thoughts about, and it's not just a few units. I'm talking, they strapped the whole structure on that one in Sacramento. There was probably 150 rectangle units strapped all the way around the middle of the center. And then they tried to hide it with painting it the same color. But you know, it's like once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it.
It's
So
it's pretty concerning. Obviously, you know, we're talking about non-ionizing radiation emitters here, not ionizing radiation. So there's, you know, we're talking about things like chalk and cheese. So consequently, the issue that you have, the potential issue you have with water's obviously got memory. Now, if you irradiate it, there's a potential for that memory characteristic to pick up some of the frequencies, which potentially is an issue. Now, there's not a great deal of science in this particular field. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence. You know, you talk about some of the properties of water. I'd be very, very concerned. I don't see there's a great deal of scientific research in this particular field, but it's a massive concern. It's a massive concern for me in relation to this type of technology. But like I said, it's not ionizing radiation, so the potential for it to do significant harm. One of the things I'm very concerned about is the disassociation of molecular bonds at certain frequencies. So the 60 gigahertz frequency, we've seen a number of radiators in the US, part of the 5G deployment, that look as if they have been built specifically to act like molecular reactors, where they would act as if Venturi, the radiators, where they've actually got a flue. So they've been built with some way to pull the fluid dynamic, using the fluid dynamics characteristics of the technology, where you can actually suck the air up. So if you heat the air in a radiator, you'll pull air through the bottom of it. And obviously, if I change the molecular characteristics or I charge the air where it becomes toxic, so I can gas you with it. Because you can do that with, you can do that if you put enough energy in a particular sort of air body. You can actually charge it. You charge it at about 30 plus electron volts. There's an argument there in the science whether it's 12, 10, 30 electron volts, whether you can charge air, you positively charge the air. That becomes pretty noxious. So the more energy I put into that air flow, the more noxious I can make it. In relation to water, it's a whole, you know, to me, that it's not something I know a great deal about, but a great cut, I'd be very, very concerned about the potential for harm, you know, because the fact that we know that water actually has a memory. And if it memorizes that radiation frequency and you're drinking, that's going to be pretty noxious as well. I mean, it's just, you know, it's unbelievable. This technology, this technological deployment, there's been no research to show that it's safe. Absolutely zero. And the modicum of research that has been carried out, the independent research, shows that it's pretty toxic. The only research that says that throws a lot of confusion in there is industry supported. You know, the government research shows it's not safe. The NTP study shows it's not safe. So, you know, what's going on here? We've got this technological deployment without any, you know, this is just unbelievable. Go on, Lenny.
Mark, while we're here with a new show with an audience who probably hasn't heard all about how 5G works, I wonder if you could give us a primer just so that we can catch new audiences up to what it is we're really talking about. I mean, the 5G is just smaller wavelengths, higher frequencies of the 4G and 3G, but now it's in the range where it starts affecting water. I happen to be a water chemist. And so the memory of water is based on 3 degrees of freedom, 2 stretching modes, and a bending mode, which you can measure by the angle of the oxygen to the 2 hydrogens. So you have a hydrogen oxygen hydrogen bond that vibrates, and then you have the hydrogen bonds symmetrically coming out and going in, or you have one going out and one coming in. And these frequencies are such that they start interfering with the resonance frequencies of the water. So if you can give us a primer on the basic physics, I can probably add in some basic chemistry, and we can make this a very informative chat for the listeners.
That's great. Well, listen, that's fantastic, because obviously that's the bit I don't know about. What I can tell you, 5G technically is a large technical basket. It actually includes smart meters, autonomous vehicles, but it's about spectrum dominance. The main blanket coverage for 5G, what we've found, is actually in the sub-gigahertz range. I've been speaking to some people who fit the transmitters. They are aligned with what I've been saying, because what we found in the first instance in the gated area where I lived, it was the 5G array that they built, this massive array, 31,875 elements, all driven from a streetlight. So these were separate elements, but they all interact with each other as a phased signal system. So basically, a mass scanner. They all operated in the sub-gigahertz range. So you had this sub-gigahertz. Now we hear the industry talking about, the millimeter waveforms, the 30 gigahertz to the 300 gigahertz range, which basically takes you into terahertz range, which is light. So the light spectrum, the terahertz range light spectrum. So what I believe the plan is to have this full spectrum, but then you've got an overlay of the pulse modulation. So you've got antennas that can actually pulse modulate at higher frequencies. Once again, and it all depends on the design of the actual antennas. I mean, what you're talking about, very, very important, because of the potential detrimental effects with water. It's something I don't know a great deal about. But obviously, I've looked at the frequencies where it can affect the breathing capability, because obviously I look at things from a weapons perspective, and obviously I'm looking at the antenna designs and how they can be a weapon at certain pulse rates and certain frequencies.
Okay. Yeah, it seems that a lot of people don't even understand what the frequency ranges are. I know when we're talking about things like the Schumann resonance, we're talking 7.3 hertz, where hertz is a measure of cycles per second.
Yeah.
But how does the 5G interact with the frequencies that our brain thinks on, and with other frequencies that are controlled by the interaction of our bodies, which are 80% water, with these frequencies that are generated?
Well, I say if you talk about the 60 gigahertz, I mean, it would be absolutely catastrophic, Lenny, if you got anywhere near it. And obviously inverse square laws, the further you are away, the less impact. However, the antenna design for 5G is the specific technical parameters, the beam wave forming capability of your antennas. So even at very, very long distances, you would still be hit and knocked down by these millimeter waveforms, if there were to be millimeter waveforms on top of the sub-gigahertz part of the spectrum that they're proposing to use. So there's no escape. At those sub-gigahertz frequencies, you can actually, you can't hide behind concrete pillars, concrete buildings. They will penetrate quite easily into anything in the sub-gigahertz part of the spectrum. So you've got this absolute complexity, and the densification, which is another technical characteristic of 5G, just means a lot more. So you've got significantly more antennas deployed on everything. So from a toothbrush, the one these transmitters in your toothbrush, from your smart TV, your smart fridge, your smart, and what I believe that whole thing is specifically for is to build out the capacity, the microwave radiation and energy in an air environment. So you've got full spectrum dominance in a cityscape where I can then fire what's called an overburden, an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, the same thing that's given off after a nuclear blast, which knocks the buildings down. I can create that in a city, these smart cityscapes, where it's not about the toxicity, where it's going to kill everybody. I'm talking about just vaporizing them all by hitting them at a specific frequency, because I've got this spectral dominance, and that's what 5G is. 5G is more about the spectrum dominance, but also the overburden, where you've actually got this massive energy input as well as the frequency. So you've got the frequency, you've got all the molecular structures in the wherever whatever your target area is, you've got all your molecular structures actually vibrating at this frequency, and then what you do, you just push the overburden, you get disassociation, so you get molecular disassociation, and you end up with just vaporizing everything.
So molecular dissociation is essentially bond breaking.
Bond breaking, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Bridgette.
Well, I was just thinking, like how criminal, like what's going on in America. I'm not saying it's not criminal everywhere else, but, you have these people pushing these smart exercise equipments, right? And everybody's buying them. They have this, emotional thing, and people buy them and they have them in their house. So they've got that as a weapon. You've got, power companies telling people, that it'll cut their power bill if we come in and put these smart thermostats in. And I'm just shocked to see how many people actually are having these smart thermostats put into their house. I mean, these are things that, like a smart thermostat, a smart meter, are super difficult to remove. Then they buy a new fridge. They have all of these new cars are basically the same thing. They can vaporize you in your car because you got like 4 or 5 smart products in your car that are going on. You're carrying smart products. Like, I'm just shocked about people's houses. I mean, people are buying smart beds now that, feel like, when you roll over and will pump up more air, and you know what I mean? They're taking care of you. And this is kind of like how things are being sold in an emotional way. Save money, be healthier, buy this smart equipment, do this and do that. And it's like, it's not so much about surveillance anymore. It's about them being sure that when they send out these weapons, and this is another thing, Mark, that happened to me back in 2008 is when I first got on YouTube. In 2010, somebody anonymously sent me this animated video, right? It didn't have any language in it, and then, when I went back to find it after I watched it, I couldn't find it. So what it was there was this huge tower in the middle of the city. There's all these people happy walking around the city. They have their doggy. They're all, taking the doggy for a walk, the happy husband and wife and the beautiful. And I didn't know what it was back then. I didn't know it was a smart city. And they're walking the dog, and then all of a sudden you see the tower and it starts pulsing. They look down at the dog, and the dog starts to have blood coming out of its eyes, and they're looking at each other with concern. The next thing they look down, bigger pulse is coming out. The blood starts coming out of the dog's ears. All of a sudden the dog falls down. The couple starts looking at each other. The tower starts, more signals. And then all of a sudden they start seeing blood coming out of each other's eyes, and then boom, everything is gone. Not a drop of blood. And so that was, somebody made that and sent it out in 2010,
It's exactly what the plan is. Well, tacit agreement, they need your agreement to kill you. So, and, people, unfortunately, like I say about this whole smart deployment, people have to be pretty ignorant to put these pieces of equipment in their home. All of that equipment can be accessed remotely. Now, there was a guy who was fitting, the cars. So you've actually got localized energy sources because, if I pour a lot of energy into an environment, I'm pretty sure that the cities in South Korea were part of the test. There was a lot of fires, a lot of the electrical equipment went down. But you see, the analyzing that failure and allows them to do things like bring autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles into a cityscape. So you've got electric vehicles, all of that equipment can pour energy back onto the grid. It does it for a reason. It can be done remotely, and it's so that you've actually got a supply of energy. You've actually got a supply of energy in on the grid. So let's say one of the breakers goes down. If a breaker goes down because you've got an earth leakage back to the power station, because the power stations will shut down when they fire the EMP. So they have to have a backup power source, PVs, windmills, electric cars. So, you know, we're talking about maybe 4, 5, 10 years away from the kill where they're going to just take everything out. Way too early. We're far too early in the resistance and the fight back, because the technology, the science and the technicalities of this are absolutely correct. They have a plan where all of this smart equipment can be accessed remotely. I can then turn it all on in the middle of the night. I can then access these power support facilities. You know, there's a number of organizations and companies now where they're developing these battery packs in localities near you. You know, it sounded like a great idea. Obviously, if the grid goes down, we've got this support power pack somewhere. Well, that's what they're doing now. But it's not what its main purpose. Its purpose is when the power stations go down, as they will, because the infrastructure, if they start to see a massive earth leakage, which that's what they'll believe the EMP is, they'll break out the breakers. That's why they've got to have these secondary batteries, lithium-ion battery packs, whether it be in an autonomous car or other, to carry on the kill to finish everybody off.
Wow. So this is the thing. So 2 years ago, I started getting video footage of military, you know, cargo on trains and then on transporter, you know, car or trucks, and they had thousands and thousands and thousands of power generators. Thousands and thousands of power generators were being transported across the United States into different areas. So that would be part of, wouldn't that also be part of the situation of them being able to use those also to continue to power, to make sure?
Well, it could be the US. It could be the US military actually sorting themselves out to protect themselves from the EMP attack. Because if an EMP attack, they take electricity down anyway. So they might be just gearing up to protect themselves.
So they're involved. They're involved in it.
Whoever's spraying aluminium particulates on the population, they're definitely involved. Because one of the things with aluminium, if I put a lot of aluminium into this environment, then obviously I can burn it out pretty quickly, because it acts pretty vociferously in a microwave radiation environment. So if people are getting aluminium nanoparticulates, if they're breathing them in internally, if they're getting them on their skin, that's all part of a system. Now, the spraying of aluminium in air, that was a weapons deployment for over-the-horizon weapon systems. So I can actually use radar, look at a blanket coverage in the ionosphere, the low ionosphere, where I've sprayed this aluminium, and I can actually get a focus on a cityscape a couple of 1,000 miles away. That's the whole purpose of chemtrailing. That's where it came from. Now, if you look at the chemtrailing now, I mean, it's all the time. It's consistent. What's all that about? Well, if I was going to fire an EMP weapon and everybody's filled up with aluminium, then consequently I'm going to be able to vaporize them a little bit more easily. Pretty straightforward to me.
I can explain that in chemical terms also. The aluminium, or aluminum as we call it in the States, has a 3+ charge on its ion. And in biological systems, most of the ions are 2+ charged. It means they've given up 2 electrons, and they balance in charge with electrons that are part of the organic structure and act to keep the shapes together of the molecular orientation. There's a lot more water in biological systems than they give it credit for, and I'm sure the key to what we're talking about is the water. But when you have these metals like aluminum or aluminium, and it substitutes in for an element like an iron or a magnesium or a calcium, there is an extra electron used up that's not there, and therefore it creates a hole. And if you look deeper into the Alzheimer research, what you find is they describe the brain as Swiss cheese with these holes. It's just a matter of every time another aluminum atom sticks in a biological system, it displaces that 2 plus ion with a 3 plus ion and creates a hole by the vacancy of not needing a sodium or a potassium that was previously needed to balance the charge that is supposed to take up space and is no longer there. It gives the biological system more wiggle room, which gets it out of shoe and allows things to break down a little more. So what we really could use is some sort of a chelate that has a specificity for aluminum, to absorb and take that aluminum out of our system. The other thing that's interesting with that is that the fluoride with the aluminum makes a compound that deposits and doesn't go anywhere forever and just locks up. And so there's a big hole where that is too. And so the more clusters we get of aluminium fluorides are very small, aluminium is fairly small, and they repel everything. It's like having something inert and lifeless right in the middle of your life system. So if you go down to a molecule by molecule basis, what we find is a lot of the biological systems are dependent on the hydration of the inorganic ions. And I don't know about you guys, but I am totally befuddled by the whole area of biochemistry and how they can get away with proposing complicated mechanisms that ignore the water. But I want to get back to 5G because I wrote down a question for Mark, and I wasn't really sure, but there is a communications company here in the States called T-Mobile. And T-Mobile is advertising on the tube that they are wiring up the rural areas because they have more range on their 5G. And my impression of how things were done is that you needed as short as possible an antenna to antenna distance to carry the wave better. And as the antennas moved apart from each other, there wasn't enough substance to carry the wave, the inverse square law that you were talking about earlier. So by what mechanism are they telling us that they can beam 5G all over the world with satellites when satellites are supposedly way out there and we're way too much distance for a wave of that intensity to carry any distance?
Right.
Okay.
Well, how to do it, Lenny? First and foremost, they're deceptive. So the fact is they're using sub gigahertz, which is long range. So they're using a sub gig carrier wave, which is actually sub gigahertz. Now that's got significant distance. I mean, we're talking thousands of miles here. All right. In fact, on the ground, you can actually get them to hog. You can actually get them to track over ground, but they're for over the horizon, so you can actually fire them up at a satellite and you take that back down to ground somewhere. So we're talking thousands and thousands of miles here in the sub gigahertz range. How you do this? You've got an antenna design where you have a number of different elements. So if you've got a number of different elements, and then what you do is you offset the signal in the different elements, and that's what starts to create what's called a beam wave. So you get more potency. The more elements you have, the more potency you have. So you create this beam wave, and that's the beam wave characteristics of 5G. So that's what they're talking about there. If anything, that's an admission of the type of antenna design that they're going to use. It operates completely well, it's different to inverse square law.
Yes, it's entirely different. It makes sense. Each of the elements, every different element has its own unique chemical spectra in the different areas where we measure, usually infrared or UV visible areas. You can tell what elements are bonded to what other elements by their stretching and bending frequencies. But that's more for molecules, especially organic molecules. When you're dealing with chemical elements, there are tables upon tables upon tables of books that are just, hang on, I don't know how to turn this off. All right, we're stuck. I got to do something.
Anyway, I'll talk while Lenny's ringing, right? Did you get it?
Now.
Okay. It's his mom's phone, so.
We'll get back to you.
We're gonna get back to her.
Yeah. And we're going to get somebody talking, but I turned down the volume of the talker.
Okay. All right. Well, continue on, Lenny, with your thought if you remember.
To take advantage of the great program.
No, this didn't work.
Okay, so if they're go ahead.
Every different chemical element in the periodic table has tables and tables of the wavelength emissions that are supposedly aligned with the electronic structure. But if we look at the different element emissions in the range that the frequencies are being emitted, I bet that they are doing things like exciting electrons from one energy level to the next energy level within the orbital shells of the metals that they're using. And by using a whole battery of different metals, they're covering all the frequencies in a very broad band. And so that would explain why they're distributing so many things in the air, in the chemtrails. When I first did the movie, What in the World Are They Spraying, with Michael Murphy, I was talking about a chemical analysis for Mount Shasta snow water that had elevated levels of aluminum, barium, and strontium. And at the time, we were not aware that barium and strontium are two components of this semiconductor that they've invented that they need to carry waves in a certain way. I don't know the chemistry of that, but maybe Mark and I can talk and we can figure it out. One of the things that I've definitely gotten onto recently is that by neglecting water in the chemistry of biology and acting as though it's a solvent, just like we neglect air in the world of humans, but it's totally important to have the right amount of oxygen in the air and keep the composition proper. Most of the global warming stuff that we're hearing is nonsense. And they're missing the fact that most of the models they're following do not treat water as having intelligence at all and think it's part of the background, just like they tell us space is a vacuum and not an ether. And so what I think we really need to do is get some people who really know their shit in their own area and have novices who don't know anything about what we're talking about come in and take what we're saying and break it down into a language that forces us to address their conception of how it goes, not our conception of how it goes, because each of us in our own field suffers from the fact that we use correct terminology and they misinterpret it. And Bridgette knows that totally. She'll be in a conversation with people and she'll say one buzzword, and all of a sudden everybody will go batshit crazy and jump on her for using a word when it was only a word she chose because it wasn't a convenient word to use in that situation.
I love that you have your kids running around. They're like ghosts back there.
Yeah,
I can see them.
That's Bridgette. Yeah, I normally have the grandkids over the weekend.
Yeah, they're super cute. They're like ghosts, like you see them sneak by. So, water. So it looks like water is turning out to be not only the air and they're spraying, right? They're preparing everything. And we're breathing that in. So they're preparing our bodies, right? They're preparing all the land, the trees. We talked about this before on my radio show where you were talking about how even the Wi-Fi, that there were studies done where Wi-Fi towers were next to bridges, or concrete, and they were breaking them down. And so also the 3G, the 4G, all this other stuff has also slowly been breaking down everything into a explosive fire resource. We know that Paradise, California was a test ground as well. And all these other fires that they have in California, they're just test grounds. They're just testing everything just to see how it's going to go down when they do the ultimate one where it just wipes a lot of people out. So it also looks apparently that they're using the water systems, public water systems, because they're putting the fluoride in there. They're also putting a lot of other chemicals with the fluoride. We know it's not just fluoride. It's, a whole bunch of different kind of chemicals that is being made in China that is sold back to countries and then put into the water. I fought in Nevada at the legislature about that fluoride thing, and what I uncovered was just unbelievable, because it's not even fluoride. It's unbelievable amount of chemistry that's in this stuff that they're putting in the water. But now with them strapping the water towers with these units, so what I'm understanding is that they're starting to vibrate the water now, right? So they've got the chemistry going in, the nanoparticles and all this other stuff. They're turning us into Swiss cheese, which is breaking us down as fuel, right? Because it's opening up holes in us. So that's starting to prepare us as a fuel, breaking us down. And then now we're ingesting this water in California. 5G is on. So all that public water towers are going.
Well, wait.
And then drinking that water in.
Wait. If water is wrapped with 5G and then delivered through a plumbing system that conducts electricity, in a field where they're mandating ions, because you have to have residual chlorine at your tap in order to make it through the municipal systems, and they're not cleaning everything out. As soon as you've tapped off that water, if you drop in some shungite, or if you let it aerate, or if you let things work, what you'll have the de-evolution of gases from the water, and the inability of that water to hold the signal. And
but this is the thing, is how there's just no way that people can actually do that, because once it comes through your tap, it's just gone through a whole apartment building with Wi-Fi and 5G. So every unit in the building has tons of smart equipment, has TVs. Each unit has we're talking like for the poor.
Essentially, the frequencies that are exciting the water are already 100% in the air. Look at air as a very, very dilute water solution. Forget about it being air anymore. Think about it as a 1 or 2% solution of water mixed in something that can't hold the water. And so if the precipitation changes the amount of percentage of water in the air, what they're doing with the chemical spraying is they're spraying desiccants and attracting the water out of the air into these clouds, which become the chemtrails, and sequestering the water from places where it would be normally needed for the biology. So not only are they giving us ions which are creating holes, they're removing the flux of water so that the water in our system, which normally would be replaced regularly, and if we keep up our hydration, we do replace it regularly, and we feel better by drinking water, tea, or things that are dissolved in the water. But when we start drinking carbonated beverages and alcoholic beverages and things that have reactive chemistry going in them, that pulls the water out of the system and takes the water that's working in the system and deprives them of the replacement water that they need so they can get a break, get out of Dodge, relax, and then come back into that work. And I'm sure that if we take water molecules and we think of them as little tiny people, every one of those water molecules that's in a working environment works for 8 hours, sleeps for 8 hours, goofs off for 8 hours. But the 8 hour period is a human scale thing that I'm talking about. If you relate it on molecular scale, it's like having your time off to recharge, having your time on to work, and having your free time
Right, but that
to
would
do
be
a few
under good,
things.
that would be if water was under good condition, but it's not. It has
That's it.
4G units on it. Then
All the
as it's
water
piped up
is
into your house, then
all the
it has
water
all
is
this.
being forced to work harder and not getting relief.
Right,
Doesn't
but it's
that sound
also
like
being,
human scale?
yeah, so but this is why, you're already seeing things like, and think about how many soft drink companies are using, well, just in hospitals. Like, I don't go to hospitals anymore because of how many Wi-Fi smart products they're using all over the hospital. You are not going to get any kind of proper care at a hospital because you're going to be bombarded with more 5G and Wi-Fi than you ever are in your own home. But say you have an apartment building and the water, public water is getting like 5G radiated, and you're buying products, right? You're buying products that are from states or areas where there is 5G, and they're liquid products. They're going into bottles. You're buying those at the store, right? You're buying bottles of water that are supposed to have whatever in them, right? So you're buying them that way. But then also, all of the water systems and the water towers in any housing that it comes up to has been vibrated with 4G. So it's all strapped up. Then they've got the 5G stuff that's attached to the water. And then it comes through the piping systems up into your house. It also has all kinds of nanoparticles in it from the spray, right? So it's already been prepared, right, to have holes in it, right? So then, and then it starts to come up through people's homes, and everybody has smart meters. Like on the building I'm in, we have 200 smart meters, right, in one room, right inside. They hide them inside. Then everybody has Wi-Fi, they have cable, they have smart TVs, a lot of them are getting smart thermostats. So by the time the water comes through your tap, it is so past the point of FUCKED.
Yeah. No,
And
totally. It's the problem that we've got. They've got all the ignorant people buying into this.
there's no way around it. And this is the other thing that pisses me off about this movement out there. Put shungite and put all this other stuff in it. It's like we're past that point, people. We're so far past that point that you think that you can control it and you can control your environment. You are messed up in your head because you're not really looking at the big picture here.
Absolutely. Yeah. The problem we've got, there's so many ignorant people. In fact, your enemy is the people that through ignorance that it's not deliberate. They've been dumbed down at school. They've been indoctrinated. And the problem that we've got, the science and the technicalities are absolutely damning. What the problem is, we've got a fake media narrative. We've got this, people who just believe that the government are the best thing since sliced bread, never going to kill everybody. This is all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan to dumb people down. The UN snowflake agenda, people just, nicey, let's have a conversation and be nice to everybody all the time. That's all over. these criminals have dumbed down these people to such a degree where what's actually happened, they've become, unbelievable to them. They've become the destruction of mankind. It's like anybody that believes they will CO2, garbage narrative. I mean, it's absolutely, you have to be, somebody's had to remove their brain cells and put just some garbage in there for you to even get anywhere near believing it. It's so unbelievable. And unfortunately, people are starting to believe this information. And
Not only that, but they also won't let us change the narrative. They'd rather physically attack us and cut off our access to talking than listen to what we're saying and address the problem. So, in essence, what we really could do is what we've started to do with our Think Collab, which is get people to think in their own area as deeply as possible, and then mix people like you and I, Mark, that have different understandings of approaches to the same thing, and get on air with conversations that are 2 and 3 people where the third person is a host, and figure out how to pull the audience in a way that can tell us the major answer that people think and the minor answer that people think. And while we're talking and letting people weigh in on their side of the equation, what we're really doing is mining for unique ways of thought from human scale, because neither the major path nor the minor path are independent. They're both highly controlled so that they can polarize opposition. But the electric universe, as it's presented by the electric universe guys on the air, is just something in what they're saying that doesn't seem quite right, that is too tied to the science modality of what we were given to believe.
So,
And
yeah, so the one thing is that all that doesn't work anymore, right? So, a lot of people have been talking. I mean, look at Dane Wigington, who's also a friend of mine with the chemtrails. I mean, he's been doing this for 20 years, right? And he still doesn't have people listening. I mean, now he has attorneys that are,
I'm not
suing.
talking about people listening. I'm talking about us figuring out how to stop the problem.
Well, that's what I've been doing. I mean, that's what I've been doing
That's
locally.
why
Like
we're
I
here.
have I have clients that
Of
work for
course.
the power company and work for Warren Buffett. And so right before, this is one thing that happened, is right before all the smart meters were deployed here in the Reno area through Nevada Energy, I'll just call them out. I'll just call them what they are. Warren Buffett bought it. And he gutted the whole power company, and he made it impossible for us to ever really have sustainable power, right? Which would be like, solar. 4 huge solar companies went bankrupt. He decided, they just made all these decisions, and they told everybody in the power company that, that that solar power leaches off of their grid and steals their power. And so all these people at Nevada Energy believed a lot of this stuff. They still do, because they believe what the company told them. So I have several clients that work in Nevada Energy, and I'm constantly sending them a lot of Mark Steele stuff, um, you know, and trying to, and they see it. They know this is happening. They also know that they're part of the deployment of all the LED lights that have just gone up all over the whole area, like within weeks. I don't know how they did as big of an area as they did, like so fast, without even people like knowing what was going on. So, and they did it at night, so people can't even pay attention to what's going on. But trying to get these people just at the power company to understand that they're part of the murder, right? You're working for a company that is in the process of making people super sick, including your families, right? And then on top of it, you're helping to set up and deploy the mass murder. And they don't really understand this. Like, you know, you can keep giving them information, you can keep explaining this stuff to them. And it's gotten to where, you know, like I've had to take a hard line with them. You know, like you should go to your bosses. You should ask them some questions, you know. And as far as they're concerned in the company, all the people that work for the company, smart meters are not a problem. Smart products, not a problem. The putting in the smart thermostats, not a problem. None of this stuff is a problem. And the key here is like, how do we put something together that we can target the people who are working in these power companies to stand up and say, no, I am not participating in this as an employee, and I'm going to re-educate my bosses in what the heck is going on. Because
I'm going to have to pop off. I've got something I need to be doing.
Yeah.
So I'll have to love yous and leave yous. So
thanks,
God bless
Mark.
yous all, and let's just keep up a good fight, eh?
Yeah.
Good to talk with you again, Mark. I'll see you sometime in the future.
Cheers, Lenny. Lenny, I'd like us to send us that breakdown of the oxygen molecule. I'd like to actually the water molecules. Sorry, I'd like to have a look at the graph with the ions, because that's going to be pretty interesting for future talk.
Okay.
Cheers. Thanks for that.
Bye,
Thanks.
Mark.
God bless you.
Okay, anyway, so yeah, pretty intense stuff.
Yeah, I think that I'm writing a note to what Mark just said. I think that was a good conversation, and that maybe we should wrap up the on air now, and then you and I can talk off air.
Yeah, that'll be great. And then I'll actually put some links on it when I upload it onto the thinkcolab. But super great conversation about the water situation, because it isn't really being brought to the table about, you know, the 5G strapping units.
Well, I think the misinterpretation of water and what it does chemically is one of the things that they've hidden from us in the whole system. And that the system of information that we've been given at a higher level from the academics in the colleges, universities, is one where they've painted a picture of the stark reality of a death culture where there is no life at all and everything has its own different frequencies. And they don't realize that the frequencies themselves are carriers of life, of light, of energy, of sound. I mean, the frequency range that we see on is so limited in the scope of all the frequencies. And when we start looking at the heavens with different magnifications of lenses and telescopes, we can tell the composition of stars and things that are going on long distances away, but we can't tell the composition of what's in a tablespoon of soil. And so the focus has been thrown so far into the abstract that the idea that water is life, life is water, and we need to get back to the basics, clean the water for all life, is just fundamental to each of our ways of thinking. And so I'm convinced that we're in a Renaissance time where as soon as people can take what they know and question it critically against what they know, they'll realize that the current insanity is by trying to hold two opposite thoughts to both be true at the same time. And we need people in the working environment to have the time to think, to put this stuff together.
Right, but we're facing something that we're facing a mass extinction right now, especially in the U.S. And this is the other thing too.
Don't
is like,
try and stop it. It's going to happen. Just make sure it doesn't happen to you.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. I mean, you and I are both in big buildings that have tons of this, smart products. So we're being
at
like
the
more
moment,
bombarded than other people who live in a house.
which is why we're probably agitated to do something about it, like have these conversations,
Well,
because we're
yeah,
feeling the effects of it.
right. And so this is another thing, like I've been trying to figure out why everybody has kidney failure, right? I mean, like a lot of it's diabetic related, but it also, is also triggered. These things are also triggered by, microwave weapons, which is your smart meter. So more than ever since 2013, especially deployed here, there is huge amounts of people who have diabetes, which we know that type 2 diabetes was not in existence before nuclear weapons. So until we had nuclear radiation, we did not have type 2 diabetes on the planet, right? So now, one of the things that Mark Steele said is that people's bodies become actually physically fatter, because your body is trying to protect itself from the amount of microwave radiation that you're being exposed to. So
More wiggle room because less water hydrating the thing. So without the water there, it doesn't keep the ions there. When the ions aren't there, things expand to the space they're allowed to fill.
right.
Just as a demonstration chemically of how loose the system is becoming by having constant vibration disrupting chemical bonding.
Right. So that would cause, starting to cause people to have more type 2 diabetes. It would cause people to start having more kidney failure. And this is how prevalent, and it wasn't until last year that I actually did this study on kidney failure in the United States, and I was totally shocked. So the thing is that people are already being damaged from the 4G Wi-Fi and all of the smart products that are already in your house and that you're using. And the other thing too is there's not enough kidneys to go around, right? I think that you get on a list here in Nevada. I know that the liver list for a liver transplant was 5 years ago was like 1,600. People would literally have to move and relocate to another state in order to get on a shorter list, to get like a liver transplant, which would take 6 months to be a resident. But you can't just have a whole population of people that have kidney failure and expect that you're actually going to get a healthy kidney from who's not living in Wi-Fi conditions, who's not living in smart product conditions. So the likelihood of you getting well is like zero. And now more than ever, you have people that are family members that are doing home dialysis for their significant others in the house, because this is how big kidney failure is. There isn't any place that you can go on vacation that doesn't include dialysis, cruise ships, so this is like the rate of kidney failure that is going on. So for me, like water is the huge part of the equation when it comes to Wi-Fi, smart products, the upcoming 5G, and what it's already doing to the water systems in our body and also the kidneys. More people have kidney infections. I mean, it's just so crazy to see how this water component is playing out in the microwave weapons deployment on people's health. So I look at the kidney failure as a huge component, and how many people have kidney failure right now. And we don't even have 5G yet in Nevada. We have it in California, but we don't have it in Nevada.
I'm wondering if what they're talking about 5G employment is all a
Deployment.
myth, deployment, and if it's all a myth and it's all out there, all arranged already.
Oh, it already is. We have all the cylinders. We have all the 5G cylinders in the whole area, right by the power company where all
And
the
so
employees are. It has
the,
the biggest one I've ever seen in my life. It is a monster. It's so big. It's unbelievable. It will kill
yeah,
everybody in the whole industrial area.
and so in a couple of years, every worker who works for that power company is going to be in kidney failure or 6 feet under.
Well, first comes the nosebleeds.
Yeah, well, yeah, the whole video that
And
you
there's no
were
birds
describing
over
at
there
the beginning
anymore.
of the
So,
show.
yeah,
I,
so the whole area, I go out in nature along the river, and there's like few birds. There's like all the birds are gone. So this starts, with Mark, Steele. He showed that when they started, moving this stuff, right? They started putting it in, right? That all the insects disappeared and all the birds disappeared from the area because they can't, they die as a direct result of this equipment. So I'm already watching, the decrease of insects and the decrease of birds big time. Like, it's rare that you actually hear little songbirds anymore in the whole Reno area, including along the river and in the natural habitats. So we're there. This is like, there's not going to really be anywhere to hide.
so if it's beyond the tipping point, then things are going to happen in the natural system that will make a complete conclusive change and reset parameters. And this could be like a mud flood, like the when the Tartarians were talking had changed history, or it could be Planet X coming through and whipping something out. But in chaotic systems, when you've reached a point where the system can't bear its own weight, the change comes suddenly, swiftly, and very undemocratically.
Right.
And so, if we are prepared within ourselves, having seeds, taking care of our own individual water, doing the best we can to stay away from outside conditions and land at a place where we're pretty much not able to pay attention to the structure of the outside world, we can build the inside world that will sustain us while the planet changes over to completely different physiological conditions, because essentially we're at the end of an oxidation reduction cycle, and we're going to go from where things live in an oxidative environment and the trees reduce things so that more oxidation can occur, to a point where that's stuck at an end point where there's more oxidation than reduction, and the atmosphere is going to have to become a reducing environment to bring it back into the middle. It happens all the time. It's the difference between aerobic and anaerobic conditions. And so I'm sure you can look at the compost and know exactly when in the compost that takes place, where the
Well, but
population
this
of
is
new
the problem, is that there won't be any
microbes.
green material to put
Don't
into your
worry.
compost.
Don't worry about the existing conditions, because no matter how angry you get at them, we can tell them to stop all we want. They're beyond the stopping point where they can change the tipping. So we know it's going to tip. We'd love them to stop. We want to keep stopping them, but we have to at some point ignore them and come up with the solution that's going to keep us alive on a human scale as everybody in the population dies from kidney failure.
Okay, well, the problem is that I already have symptoms of death. So I have large patches of hair that are falling out, right, from living in the building with all the smart meters. I'm trying to take all the supplements I can to keep the oxidation down, but the oxidation process is so severe. It's completely damaging, has damaged my thyroid, right? So
Right.
the problem is like, I'm not going to be around if we don't stop what's going on. And there are going to be a lot of other people who are not going to be around. And for sure, the children will not survive this. children are not going to survive this. When their parents put them in cars, they're buying smart cars, they're microwave ovens. These little children, their brains are not going to make it. And we're not, unless we stop it, we're not going to have anybody that's going to be able to be the change in this world when all of it falls apart. Because it's all targeting, babies are smaller than people. So if the birds are dying, then the babies are dying. The children are going to die long before the adults die. And there isn't going to be anybody that's going to be able to repopulate to actually carry things forward. So this is about, having to really fight.
Right. And
Get this
there is no
information out there.
lifestyle that these people can see ahead without the industrial economy they're in, because they are so busy earning their wage to keep their house over their head that they're not going to listen to anything we have to say, nor take the time, because they don't have the comprehension to get on the level with us where we are now. And so I want to talk about what we can do to address what the problems are. And today in our conversation between me and Mark and you, I think we realize that it's a water problem, and that the water is what is specifically being targeted, and that the frequencies that the water carries are so warped by fluoride in the water and the requirement of how we process our sewage, which the municipal water
and all of the water towers are strapped with 4G, and now the 5G towers are being built right next to them. So this is the big problem, way bigger than fluoride, way bigger than sewage in the water, way bigger than any kind of pharmaceutics in the water, is that they're microwaving all of the water in the public towers because they're all strapped now with these units. And the water that goes into your house is not fixing itself because it's coming through pipes where you have whole buildings that are strapped with all kinds of 4G and 5G mechanisms, and amplified by every unit that there is that the water has to pass through. So there's no possible way that you can fix your water. The only thing that you can do is drink well water at this point, right? I mean, to be able to actually be on land, where you're actually drinking well water that's coming up out of the ground, and you're drinking it as it comes up out of the ground, because there's not certainty that you can actually store it.
And that's part of what fracking is destroying, is the quality of well water all over the place, because it's using water to push oil out of the ground, and such is pushing oil right into the water table.
Yeah, but I mean, there are a lot of states that have actually banned fracking in the United States these days. But the thing is that people need to go out and look. They need to go look at their water towers. In Nevada, the water towers are more visible because we don't have forests. We don't have any of these things covering the water towers. So you can just drive down roads and see the exposed water towers with all of the stuff strapped all over them. And like I said, we're not, California is screwed.
Themselves, what do you want them to do?
I want them to start paying attention to what's going on and go down to their power companies who are supplying the power to these mechanisms, and are involved with the power that is going to these things. And I want these people that are working in power companies to actually start asking some questions and talking to the people that employ them, and specifically about the smart meters that are actually causing serious amount of cancer. All kinds of chronic disease is being created just from the smart meters. And people don't even realize that this is happening because few people are sensitive to microwave stuff. I'm one of them. I happen to be super sensitive, but just because you don't feel it happening to you doesn't mean that it's not affecting the inside of your body.
Oh, absolutely. And the things that people can do to help themselves are to drink more water, unadulterated, without stuff in it, and or if they have to have stuff in it,
Well,
have
where are you going
stuff
to
that
get that
is.
water? Where are you going to get it?
So you're saying we have no options. We can't do anything to protect ourselves. If you just take your tap water and let it rest outside of drinking it right off the tap, but you don't want to do that, you want to put it through a filter. But let water stand and it won't hold vibration. It'll level itself out. And the things
Okay,
to stop.
okay, so I live in an apartment building,
Right.
right? That has 200 smart meters down the hall
So
inside
you're
the
doing
building.
the best you can by going out and buying water and using that, right? It's not going through the plumbing, it's not going through the system. It helps you. If everybody stopped using the system water and got on their case, it would stop instantly. But we can see we're not going to get everyone on board with anything because
Right.
they don't have the time, they don't have the knowledge, and all we're going to do is get angry with them and be sharper, and they'll listen to us less.
Right. But I'm just saying, so this is what I do. I have to go down to the water filter place to get water. I get it in containers and I have to put it in the car. Okay. So anytime I want to get water, I have to go down to the car, pour it into whatever I'm going to be drinking, right? Get a drink or whatever else, and then that's it. I do not bring the water in the house because of how many smart products are in this building that are constantly vibrating the water that would be sitting in a glass on the counter, right? So the whole building, people have all kinds of Wi-Fi in all of their buildings. They have every separate piece of Wi-Fi equipment. Their products is vibrating all of this stuff. This is why buildings go up in fires that can't be stopped, and the whole buildings are incinerated, is like Mark had talked about before, is because all of these products are, vibrating in the house, and they're starting to break
Yeah.
it down as
You
fuel.
look at the concentration of the vibration and where it's coming from, you find that the location where the smart meter is exactly the same location as where the fire started. And
Yeah.
if you look at the recent fires in Australia and California, how they're showing burned out cars with trees in the background that aren't burnt, you could see that it's the electronics within the car getting hot that's causing the fire. But the whole idea of less water in the air because they're spraying desiccants feeds the fires also.
Right. Right. But everything is being broken down as fuel. So um what we have to do is we just have to stop this whole thing in its entirety. And that's kind of like, what I do is I go out and talk to people who are involved with the power company. I go out and I put up all kinds of different kinds of information. I post it wherever I can find places. Um, I know that the fire department is very much involved. They don't allow any kind of Wi-Fi. They don't allow smart meters. They don't allow anything on the public firehouses. There's a reason why, but people don't go and ask them and talk to them about these things. Otherwise they probably would talk more openly about it.
Well, people have compartmentalized knowledge, and we're taught to defer to the people who know better. And so, if you get into fire departments and the situation of how they control things, a lot of it is about keeping the information of how they do things out of the public so that the public can't damage themselves. I don't think that's a real good way of running public interface. I think we need more information to be circulated amongst people, but we need to really question what we're getting from the indoctrination system and understand the mechanisms that we're actually dealing with, because what we were taught those mechanisms aren't really true any longer.
Yeah, no, we're at the end of all of this stuff with, that we somehow can use, William Reich's work, or we can use these crystals and all this other stuff. If things weren't as severe as they are, you probably could. But the point is that even that stuff is not working anymore. And, because I think a lot of people aren't in healthcare. I'm in healthcare. It's what I do, alternative medicine. And so I see a lot of the consequences of, all of the stuff that's going on. And that, that we are, for whatever reason, we're being mass extincted, and they're actually going to use microwave weapons to extinct, most of the population. I mean,
Yeah, and it
and
doesn't
that's clear.
beget a very
And
good
that's
situation.
and that's clear. So the power companies, the water companies, the military, the governments, they're all involved without a
Everything
shadow of a doubt.
everything that's not on human scale is working to eliminate human resources because they have found that they have artificially intelligent resources that they think can do the job that a human could do, and it is more profit. So corporate pollution is just worldwide in information as much as it is in garbage. And so addressing the polluted sphere from human scale is really important. And that's why our human collaborations and our think collabs are really important for people to not only listen, but to discuss and share and see that each of us don't agree on a lot of different things, but we do agree that the change that we have to undergo needs to be as immediate as possible and has to do with the ability of the planet to sustain life.
Yeah, but we're at the point now where there's just a lot of places that can't sustain life anymore.
And there's nothing we can do about the places that can't sustain life anymore, but let them go and work on sustaining life in the places that still have life.
Yeah, well, that's too late too.
Well,
Like
then
that's
give
one of the
up.
things that I've been doing is going out and trying to get people who own large habitats to allow me to come in and start making, types of microbial medicines in order to keep those areas alive and teach other people how to do it. And nobody is interested in doing that. And then what they'll do is they'll go ahead and allow somebody to put a cell phone tower or a 5G tower right onto that property.
Pretty insane, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is super insane. The whole thing is insanity. I mean, and it's interesting to me, like, you know, how complicated all this stuff is. So I'm just going to put this on here. So anyway, so this has been the collab for January 12th. And we had Dr. Lenny Thyme on, Bridgette Dolgoff, me, and we had Mark Steele on, who is the international military microwave weapons expert. He also I don't know if he's still doing it, but he has been doing this for such a long time that he actually was an inventor, part of teams that invented protection against military microwave weapons on the battlefield to protect certain types of human, military on the battlefield against governments that were deploying microwave military weapons that would kill them. So, he's been doing this a super long time. He knows exactly how these things work. And we're grateful that Mark Steele, came out of the woodwork and has taken a really strong position globally against the courts, against the governments, to actually educate people on what's been going on. And I think these weapons have been being used, microwave military weapons, which are the same things as the smart meters, the 5G, 4G, these are all weapons that have been being used since the 60s on military. And right now, like he said, we're in the testing phase. He said South Korea they tested on recently. Paradise Fire was a big testing ground in California. And these are areas where they've already put up 5G, so they're already testing them. And also those EMP impulses can come through your cell phone, your computer, your smart meter, your smart fridge, your Peloton, exercise bike, all of these, Wi-Fi capable smart products are also part of the whole weaponry, right? All these things that people buy to use with Wi-Fi. I remember seeing a phones coming out of Paradise Fire, because I knew several people that barely got out with their lives, so they knew a lot of other people, so a lot of information was circulating. But I remember seeing people posting pictures of their phones the day after, because they were on the edge of the weapons that were deployed through all those those 5G systems, and people had phones that were cooked because they were barely on the edge of the whole attack. So their phone actually caught the signal of the attack, but they were far enough away from it that the phone didn't explode and their car didn't ignite.
Yeah, the direction of the beam and the intensity of the signal make a major difference in how things go. And that inverse square law, whereas energy falls off with distance, is why that carrier of ions was such an important concept that Mark and I discussed. So there was a lot of good information provided in this video. I think that we'll hear more of this. It's a good one. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. And it was good that we could get Mark on at the last minute. But anyway, you'll be in touch with Mark. And then you have his Skype contact too now, so that you can contact him, right?
He was in my Skype previously, and
Oh, okay.
we haven't talked in a lot of depth on the chemistry like we talked about today. But I don't have access to the books I need to look up some of the information that I provided. It's tables and tables of information, and it's out there in a book called the CRC, or in another book called the Merck Index. So if people want to look up these vibrations for different elements, there are lots and lots of vibrations for different elements, but it's putting together the theory of how it works to act as a carrier for bands of energy that it appears the military has focused on. And I don't think that's something that we as individuals are going to be able to repeat unless somebody who's really a data crunching maven just goes to those books and starts looking at which resonances coincide in different elements. But I don't think the carrying capacity of the system is long term any longer. And so once we lose the system, if there's an EMP pulse or the grid goes down or something like that, it's not a disaster for those people who need to quench the vibrations. It's a disaster for the current system.
Right. So I think like what we can take from this is that 2 years ago, the military started, moving power generators to areas where they could hunker down and be protected against the main, EMP microwave weapon, release in large areas and populations, right, which will kill the population. So and that they have been practicing, like Mark said, in different areas of the world, practicing so that when they do this on the mass population, that they have it right and they wipe out everyone.
Aren't they lovely?
Yeah. So anyway, well, thanks for being on the Think Collab, and I'll get this posted later today. Thanks, Lenny. Bye.
Bye-bye.